Hello and welcome back to another episode of the TF Cast. I'm your host, Willis.
Hey. Hey, Zach here. It's March 16th, 2022.
And I'm Jacob Bases. Today I am delighted to present Abbey. And we're going to talk about the Makerspace and your kind of journey through that place and how you got into woodworking and teaching there. So Abbey, take it away. Tell us a little bit.
Yeah, well, I'm also excited to be here. Thank you, guys. So my name is Abbey. I'm from Mankato and just moved back almost 2 years ago. And so coming back into Mankato, I had a little bit of wood turning under my belt from the school up near Morris, the Milan Arts Village School. It's like a smaller makerspace of sorts. So I learned wood turning there, and then as I made my way back to Mankato, I was keeping an eye out for that. But then what actually got me into the makerspace was a piece of bird's eye maple and then 2 stitches later on in my middle finger because I was working at a friend's shop and Don Darling came in to trade for some bird's eye maple. And then in exchange for that from my friend, he offered to teach me turning classes. And so last winter, I started going down to the makerspace to turn with Don. And my first time there, we were cutting a piece on the bandsaw, and I thought it was off. It was not. And then I nicked my finger, and Don ended up taking me to the hospital and waiting for me. It was pretty minor, but it's an important detail of getting into the makerspace because everybody was patient as I dealt with it, and as Don helped me. And then I just kept going back there because they showed to be just like super welcoming to me. So that's how I got started going to the makerspace last year.
Sure. For the completely uninitiated, what is the process of turning?
Yeah, so turning happens. So this is wood bowl turning is what I'm doing on the wooden lathe. There's also metal lathes, which are a lot bigger. But pretty much the lathe will run from like 600 RPMs up to like 2,400 RPMs. And it's got your blank of wood or whatever you choose to be turning that's glued up. And as it's turning, you're cutting across and shaping. So it's a lot of like bowls or spindles, candle holders, and that's the active turning on either like fresh wood or stuff that's been dried. So like those spindles on that chair were probably turned.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a chair off camera.
You see it. So it's it allows like more round woodworking of sorts.
Have you done, is this like a focus of your woodworking, or you experienced with some other styles, or is this kind of where you've done most of your wood shop stuff?
Yeah, it was my entry into it, and now it's what I'm most involved in teaching, which I know we'll get to. But I also work at a cabinet shop right now, and did some home remodeling last year, so I've also gotten to see that bit of home projects, as well as right now building cabinets, assembling them, and then we install them. So now, like right now, I feel like I'm in this space of just learning all the different pockets of woodworking that I can, to then see later on what's kind of fun to create.
So what does the makerspace offer for someone like you with your interests and that sort of thing?
I think the biggest part has been the people that are around there, like getting to know those that also teach or are there frequently, but also people who've now come in as students or even like musicians when there's events. That's been, I think, a huge part of me feeling more connected to Mankato, and also feeling encouraged to keep making. So I think the people and getting to know one another is a big space there. And then also getting to play around with what other things could be made. So I do a lot of wood bowl turning, but then there's a lot of things you could do in the finishing room to a wooden bowl, or that I think is kind of the next bit for me too, is seeing what else you could add or other ways you could collaborate with like ceramics, or like I tried spinning on the ceramics wheel because I was like, yeah, I might be able to do this. And then I still have a lot, I think, to learn of ceramics because it's totally different than wood turning. But I think with the people and then, yeah, more chance to explore other things too.
That been something that's kind of grown through your experience there? Like when you talk about, moving over from like just starting there to teaching, like was that motivation you found through working at the Makerspace, or was that something that you had always kind of wanted to get into?
I think a huge part of wanting to teach was feeling grateful for those that had welcomed me into woodworking or had been mentors to me in other forms of art. Like I had the 70-year-old retired professor teach me knitting. And so I have felt lucky over the past couple years to have some really important mentors in my life. And Don Darling was one of them too. So when he passed away last summer, there was kind of that chance too to reflect on like how much it meant that he just kind of took me on and kept teaching me, and that was something that I could also bring back to the space, along with Jeff, who I teach with, made it a lot more possible. So I didn't plan to end up teaching there so soon, but with working with Jeff and then kind of feeling encouraged to get the lathes going again, it kind of just kept growing on itself this year. But now that I've had the chance to teach, I learned I really love it. Because I think it also challenged me to learn a lot more and then also feel a lot more confident in my craft, even though I've only been doing it 3 years maybe. Yeah.
Sure. What is the, like the average person who's coming into like this as a complete beginner, what are they just looking to like do something with wood or like see what's out there? Like what is typically the thing that draws them to the lathe?
It's a good question. I think some people come into it wanting to do a specific project eventually. Some have come because they used to turn with their dad or another friend, and now they want to pull that blank out again from 20, 30 years ago. So some it's kind of re-exploring if they can do something they did in shop class. And I think that's what's kind of nice about offering just a beginner class to this tool that seems very intimidating at first, but once you're on it, a lot of people have found comfort. So I think it's also a nice tool to get into woodworking at large. Because if you're like, well, I can handle that tool, maybe I want to mess around with some of this other stuff. But everyone kind of has been coming to class with different motivations. But some of it is to build on like previous experience and see if they can do it again. Or just also people have watched a lot of YouTube videos on turning and then want to see if they can do it on their own.
Oh, sure.
And a lot of people can. Like, it's awesome.
I mean, I want to talk for a moment about the awesomeness that is the Makerspace. Like that's kind of like you could watch a YouTube video on almost anything and you'd be like immediately upset because you couldn't do it. But like if you just went to the Makerspace, you probably could. I mean, with the amount of tools and kind of like you could do some welding there, you could do pottery, you can do like they've got CNC stuff, you can do bowl turning, it's amazing.
It'd honestly be kind of hard to figure out what they don't have if I had to try.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I think too, like each department or all the teachers involved in each one are so good at welcoming people in at any point that you come in. So even if you've been doing it for a couple years or you're just getting started, you're always able to find your place there and grow from that. And so I like that, like for our lathe class, it's not like you're going to produce 5 bowls by the end of the night and that's the goal and they're going to be perfect. It's more like, hey, come on in. Like if this scares you, that's fine. Like we're just hoping to show you tools, the process, and then the hopes that we could encourage people to come back and keep learning if they like it. Or sometimes Jeff says like, you might find you don't like it and that's okay. Like it's a chance to explore it. And then if you like it, we're right there for you. And some people now are getting to a point where they will be able to do it on their own, which I also love, because then you can find your own way you want to do it. Someone's does a lot of resin work and is really excited to try some like resin and wood projects, not just the logs that we're always working on.
I was there the other day and I saw someone doing something with like these oil infused bowls too that they were turning, and wow, that was amazing. It kind of like see through and glow. It's so cool what you can do with that. That's awesome.
Leif and Tyler have been like soaking their bowls in oils, and then it makes it this like translucent, and I had never seen that before. But it's beautiful.
Those, I'm sure they'll just shine once they get a good finishing coat on them. Wow, it's awesome. I mean, and those two have been, I just got a membership. I'm very excited about it. Cool place. Those two have been really helpful for me since I showed up. Tyler right away was showing me all kinds of like how to use different tools, or just giving me a little walkthrough on some basic stuff. And it's been a great experience, and I waited too long to join, but I'm glad to be a member now. So
he has been talking about it like as long. I've been probably originally like 5 years or something, and I think that's been a regular point of conversation.
It's even been mentioned on the podcast before. Probably. I was probably like, because we talked about the Makerspace a little bit, but it's becoming an awesome like pillar of the kind of creator community too. Like, I've seen some awesome stuff come out of there from like just members and from people who are instructors, and Dustin Sweer's amazing work. And
what got you to, like, how did it line up now that you joined?
It was the home renovation project. Like before I wanted to go, and then I wanted to do like one little thing. I wanted to cut a couple boards or do something else, and now I'm a homeowner, and we're doing a home renovation project, and having access to all those tools is amazing. Like we were able to brief context on the project. We were making cabinet handles, doing a little bit of routing, table sawing, and miter sawing, none of which I have. So going to the Makerspace solved all the problems and made it really easy. It was wonderful. Yeah.
It's awesome.
For you, what has the thing been that has pushed your craft further? Like what is the thing that you're producing now that is what you aspired to previously?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that for me being able to make bowls comfortably on my own and be able to troubleshoot something on the lathe has kind of been a part of the process that I was missing for a little bit, where I had, I had learned how to do wood bowl turning. I was farming for a couple summers in Litchfield, and there was a shop teacher who let us turn with him, but it was always under this, someone else kind of knew how to handle when there was a problem. And so then, especially in this last year teaching, and then spending more time on it, it's been a lot more of not having the perfect piece of wood anymore and figuring out how to work with that, or understand that it's not going to end up how I want it to, so I'm going to adjust how I even think about this. And so I've felt a lot of growth in my ability to like adapt to how something takes place, like how at first it was like, this bowl is going to look probably like this. And now I'll be like halfway through a bowl and there's a giant crack in it. And it's like being able to be like, well, maybe I'll epoxy this. Or Leif showed me how to add like biscuits, which is kind of like a stitch. And feeling like calm in that process, where it's like, this did not go how I wanted, but this is a craft where I can still adjust. And sometimes I just end up with a very tiny bowl. And I think that's really cute too. So I think that's probably been a big thing for me this year. Like my bowls probably don't look too different than, well, maybe they do, but I haven't been like pumping out a lot of bowls just because, I'll be teaching, or after work, I'll be quite tired with, like my hands are tired from making doors or something. So I think like looking ahead, I'd want to, like, I'll probably hope to take a class at some of the other schools around the state and, maybe learn some more about bowl turning, like advanced bowl turning with, like, you can do like live edge pieces or that sort. But kind of in that moment where it's like I haven't done a lot of different things with my bowls. It's more been like my mindset around it and even knowing I can teach. So a little ambiguous of an answer, but
That's cool.
Yeah.
It seems like a fulfilling creative process. Like found something that you can really explore both on multiple fronts too. With having being able to have a process that you're in charge of, and then also being able to like teach that to people. I think that that's an important part of like becoming a well-rounded crafts person.
Yeah, it's been cool. And more recently I've been able to find intersections with like the wood bowl turning and then work at the cabinet shop where, one is like bowls are very round. In the cabinet shop, it's a lot more square production, like, and a lot more like dried lumber. And so it kind of was feeling separate versus recently there's been a lot more intersections of like, oh wait, I can talk about sharpening tools in both spaces and learn from mentors across the board. And even thinking about like where we're getting lumber from at the cabinet shop, and that's kind of just a big mess right now, along with a lot of other things in general. And so learning more about how if we use like freshly cut wood, what that process is like. And then in bowl turning, you're also thinking about like freshly cut wood versus dry wood. And so I think that's been part of it too, is finding some of those intersections of something I'm creating or teaching with others, but something I'm doing for work and learning. So it's nice that they're merging a little bit.
What is like the difference in feeling between something like, I mean, I imagine if you are, working in a cabinet shop, you're kind of like hitting quotas and like pumping things out. And then on the other side, like you got into this like strictly for enjoyment, or like you wanted to side hustle or something. Like what is your like mental approach look like, differ between those two?
I think for the cabinet shop, since I started there about a year ago with pretty little experience, and so I'm learning as I go from somebody else, and then also having to like meet the needs of the shop. And so I have to be a lot more focused and have a lot, like pretty good time management to switch from the tasks we got to get done in a day. And I'm fortunate to work in this shop where, we hope to get a lot done, but if it doesn't get done at the end of the day, it's going to be okay. Which I appreciate a lot. Versus then when it's kind of like turning on my own, I think I sometimes lack the discipline to follow up on a project or keep adding to my own learning, just because it's, it is on my own, and like teaching keeps me going back to the space and involved in it. But I think a little bit like my own personal bowl turning has not taken a sidestep, but it's, I'm trying to figure out how I keep myself accountable to like going for it. And so I think that kind of differs, where for me to try something new at the bowl turning isn't like a requirement. It would more be like my curiosity to push me towards that. And so I think when we got started, it was like I'm kind of coming out of this like winter hibernation, and this is kind of on my mind too, is like what would help me with that encouragement. Like it doesn't have to come from just myself, but there's some other good friends like up in the cities who are bowl turners, and it's like, connecting with them to do some classes, or it's a little bit, I think.
I've seen that or heard of that happening a lot in art too, where it's easy to take work that looks a little bit like your art and then have that affect the art side of things. I think that it happens to me a lot. I know. Zach and I were talking about that earlier today too, actually.
We were?
Yeah. but that's okay.
Into the void.
Yeah.
What were we saying?
We were talking about how, like when, if your work shifts and it includes like a piece of your art, that sometimes it can compromise like the way that you're able to continue creating
I see
art.
what you say.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about that exactly, actually. That's my fault. Yeah, totally, completely understand, especially depending on where the space is. Like, I'm sure if you were someone who had, like, your own shop, for instance, and you were both making cabinets and making bowls in there, it probably feels a little different in the space. And that's basically what happened to me is my personal studio turned into my work studio, and then it was like hard to get into a creative space there for a really long time.
Yeah. Well, and you doing the same thing too with teaching on the lathe, then you're like, okay, now I'm done teaching. I'll just go keep turning.
Yeah.
Which, it can be done, but the art goes through those fluctuations, whereas something like a teaching job is kind of more like the consistent part.
Mhm.
So it's just interesting when those things
Yeah.
collide.
Well, I'm grateful, like Jeff, who I teach with, he's really good at checking in on, like, you're getting to do your own turning too, right? Like
Yeah.
I appreciate that about him too, is that he does check in about that. And sometimes I'm like, oh, well, no, I haven't really, And
Mhm.
so last week, finally, I did get started on this blank, and Leif was showing me how to, like add some biscuits, like those stitches. And that's where I was kind of like had that realization, like, oh, it's been a minute since I've just done my own.
Mhm.
And I think that's going to help kickstart it too. But
So when you think about your woodworking or like where you want to go in the future with it, do you consider yourself someone who wants to be like more of a maker, someone who like is more of a designer, or like do you consider it like something you want to do as like an art form, or I guess just like kind of how do you quantify?
yeah,
Yeah.
I think the teaching has been a cool bit to get into, because it's shown me the ways I really enjoy that and the opportunities that exist to teach, different amounts of woodworking. And I think that's kind of what I'm drawn to recently. Along with, like, it's super cool to be able to know, like, as I work in the shop and around the space, I can learn how to handle different home projects or like help out a sister with something. And that's something I want to keep being able to do, is just support like a space I have or other people's spaces, or use the opportunity to teach as a way to build something for a space. So I'm thinking of, like, if I do teach a class later in the summer with kids, like, do we build raised garden beds that are used in the space? So that kind of teaching that also is later brought into use, or even like doesn't have to be a practical use, it also can just be to add to a space. So that's kind of what I've been identifying, which then means I just have to kind of keep, it'll always be learning the craft, but specifically right now it's added to my level of patience to just like go with it, versus right away there were a lot of questions from a lot of retired woodworkers being like, when are you going to open your own shop? When are you going to get going? And I was like, what? I don't think I could do that right now. And so now I've kind of slowed down to be like, I'm going to learn, and then hopefully I can keep teaching. Yeah.
Well, you have a very warm and calming energy, so I think that makes a lot of sense for you.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It'll be fun.
Heck yeah.
Is there? When I imagine the lathe now, I imagine always, I guess because I've seen so many metal lathes on like YouTube and stuff. Is it a process that you're doing by hand, like guiding this, or is this like something you're doing with a like software? Like what?
This is like all by hand more so. So you have I don't know if my hands can be seen.
If you raise them on the table.
Okay. But you have, the lathe has a bench, and then there's where the chuck is, and that's where your wood is attached to. So as that's spinning, you have your tool rest that's raised up a little bit, and on that tool rest you rest the gouges or the different cutting tools. And so you're the one guiding where that's going, and you have to kind of adjust the tool rest to accommodate for the turns you're creating. And you also, all of them in different ways, you can adjust the speed. So you start at slower speeds, and then by the end, as the bowl is more balanced, you increase the speed. But you're the one deciding like where the tool is going, how much you're like giving it pressure. And the tool you're working with mainly is called a bowl gouge. And it's got like a bevel on the whole edge. So you have to carefully get like the right angle. And so a lot of learning the lathe is learning how to handle those tools. And I always tell people, like, you can stop this at any time, back away, because you can get a tool caught in the bowl and it's kind of freaky. But it's also nice because the lathe isn't about like carving anything the fastest or anything like that. It's like taking your time, being consistent. And if you find you like the lathe, it can actually be a pretty calming activity. Is what Jeff and I find. Then you feel super cool because people are walking by and it's going, 1,000 rotations per minute, and you're just calm.
It's cool to watch. You see it spinning, and somebody's there with the tool because it's a nice like big metal blade of some kind, and then just the big wood chips flying.
Have you seen
all over the place?
Have you seen when someone's doing it with like a soft resin and it's like streamers of resin coming off? It looks awesome. There's a show called Making Fun on Netflix right now where they make things that kids come up with, and there's a scene where they're like playing this music and it just looks like confetti shooting out, and by the end he's completely covered. He looks like Cousin It. It's great.
Yeah.
When I think about that, the thing you just described, what was the technology that was before? I don't know if you know that. Like,
yeah, well, that's something I've been getting curious about. Is like I don't know much about how old the tool is or where it came from or what was it inspired by. But I have wondered, like, how do people do it, one, without a lathe, or two, one that's not electrically powered. So I have seen, and there are, like, foot-pedaled lathes where you're, like, yeah, kind of like a sewing machine maybe, where you're pumping it. So I know that that's a thing. And then people also hand-carve bowls. And then there was also a woodworker that taught a class on how to make a bowl with like an angle grinder. So you're just like carving it that way. But yeah, I think the foot-powered lathe came before the electronic one. Sure. But from like how that came to be, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like imagining like a kick-powered sewing machine a little bit.
Yeah, you could do. I mean, it's a similar technology to like a windmill or like you turning force into rotational energy, but I don't know when it would start, like when it was something people decided to do, because I bet they did like more traditional carving methods or like burning out the inside kind of thing earlier. And
when I went to like Maine this summer, and there was an old like shipbuilding museum and center, and they had an old like foot-powered lathe there to make spindles for the ship and that kind of thing. And I was like,
that's awesome.
Just never thought of that.
Yeah. I suppose like a lot of those railing decorative things for houses were probably made with that. So it's probably foot-powered stuff, or like maybe more industrial versions in some cases.
Big spaces.
So, and when you're talking about the actual like metal lathe, apparently it was 1751 when it was invented by someone named Henry Maudslay.
Wow.
Thank you. Cool.
Here I thought someone just like put their lawnmower on their side or something. Hey.
I was thinking someone probably like it was probably made around the time like a potter's wheel was invented. Like that's like a similar motion.
Those things got to be ancient. I bet we've had pottery wheels forever.
Yeah.
Like, of course, 1781 is pretty ancient as far as I go.
There's a video of a guy making a foot-powered lathe out of just like sticks in the woods.
Yeah, I've seen some of that.
Yeah, that's really cool.
The rotation for the wheel probably for the wood and the pottery like helps you make better shapes, I think. But like otherwise, you just would be like shaping things before.
Yeah.
I was at the museum, and they used to make clay pillows. They're like gift traditions. They were like made out of like glazed, pottery, and they'd give them to brides and grooms on their wedding. Clay
Yeah.
pillow. Anyway.
Well,
can
that's, I
move
mean,
on from that.
like wooden spoons are they're a big thing in Milan. So up near Morris, every year they have a annual spoon festival, wooden spoon festival. So like spoon carvers from all across, for sure the state, if not probably larger, come and share their spoons. And like spoons also used to be given to somebody as like a, will you date me type of thing. Like if I make you the best spoon. And so like spoon carving, is this wood shop in the cities is called Fireweed Wood Shop, and they try to create more space for like women and non-binary makers, and they do a lot of just like spoon carving in the park because you're learning like axe work and then chisel work, and so I think also bowl carving is a lot of those same methods where you're working with like a fresh cut log you found and you go from that. But yeah, I feel like I have a lot more to explore on like where that all comes from.
The rotating speeds it up a lot. That's got to be what it
Yeah.
is. Because I took a wood shop class when I was a kid, and we used the gouges to do bowls, and there was like one kid out of the crew who could finish in the whole
Yeah.
semester of that class or whatever, because it was just like tedious.
There was someone who had only ever hand carved a bowl, and he came for a class a couple weeks ago, and he was like, that went so fast. And I'm like, yeah, it does. But it was kind of cool for him to go from only having hand carved one to then seeing it on the wheel. Yeah, I think he'll be coming
Honestly, if someone made me a wooden spoon to like court me, that would totally work.
back. Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know you're supposed to oil and boil them. Did you guys know that?
I don't know the boiling part.
Yeah, you're supposed to boil them to get everything out of them, and then oil them as like a protectant.
Do you know the oiling part? I should try the boiling.
Cool. Well, we should send this one towards getting some plugs out for the Makerspace.
Mhm.
Anything upcoming over there? Yeah.
Yes. So this Saturday, which is going to be the Taste of Makers, which
We could have the episode.
Yeah, I guess we could. It's
we don't
possible.
have to. I should have asked that before we got started.
Yeah.
I
We
wasn't
could put
sure
it up
that.
tomorrow.
It's possible. Let's plan to try. You can shout it out anyway. Just tell the people
Yeah.
what it is.
It's also like filling up, so maybe you can leave it for it went well.
Go oil your spoon.
Yeah.
It's a reoccurrence of a regular event that the Makerspace has, though, right?
Yes, they did it once in the fall, and if this is happening before or after, it'll be okay. Because there's been a lot of like signups for it, which is good. But it's a chance for people to come in for a couple hours and see a bunch of different shops and get a little bit of hands-on. I think there'll be lathe work, painting, 3D printing, ceramics. So that's happening 6 to 9 on Saturday.
Sorry if we got it out too late, y'all.
Yeah, but that's also okay because another like one thing that's got a lot of leeway is that we do kids classes every Saturday. So if I say this, it applies to any week that this is out. So the kids classes, I think, probably want some of the big promotion too. It happens every week, 10 to 12, and they ask people to register before. Like you can go online to check out what classes are going on. So there's like self-portraits, like found object sculptures, and the goal is really to get kids to have like hands-on time with a lot of the tools or different crafts there. And then there's like teachers from the Makerspace that are giving the classes, but also just from around the community.
There's a few former guests that'll be featured on that.
Correct. Yeah. It's getting a lot of teachers involved, which is cool. And it's like a paid opportunity to teach, which I think is also really a cool chance to have for artists. I got to substitute teach for a potato stamping class, which was a lot of fun. So that'll be ongoing every Saturday.
Awesome. And Makerspace always does, you can sign up for memberships and stuff on their website, or they have regular occurring events. So
Yeah.
they post about those on their Facebook page and stuff.
Yeah, and most classes are held weekly, so you can always check those out. And if anyone's ever like not been down there, but they don't want to fully commit to a class, you can just come in and look at everything before you decide you want to go for one of them.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
super cool over there. Go say hi. I might be there now too.
Yes. And you don't have to get 2 stitches when you first start going. That was just hopefully a one-time thing for me. So here we go.
But if it happens, you'll be surrounded by
Yeah,
helpful
we'll
people.
take care of it.
It's better than bleeding out in your own garage, probably.
Yeah.
Correct.
Let's not.
Yes, they're definitely going to want me to come back on here more since now I've told them that you could possibly cut your finger. No, that all safety things are followed. That was a personal bad call. Makerspace handled it well.
You're working with potentially dangerous tools.
Yeah, that is what we talk about in the shops. It's just like people. It's good to respect the power of the tools, no matter what shop you're working at. So I got full respect for the bandsaw now. Anyways.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah,
it was
thank you guys.
it's always great to talk to Makerspace representatives and learn more about bandsaws and lathes and all about everything and your work too. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks for letting me share.
Awesome.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.